Every now and then in Hollywoodland, a character that's identified as feminist will magically make his way through the production process and appear on our television screens. Unfortunately, this is almost never good. What the Hollywood machine turns out is a distorted and warped version of feminism, which bears little resemblance to actual feminist movements. In a desperate quest to distance themselves, their plots, and their characters from anything that could in any way be mistakenly mistaken for feminism, Hollywood writers rely on one of the most deceptive and disgusting tropes ever to be forged in the fires of Mount Doom. That trope is called the straw feminist. In television and movies, the straw feminist works by deliberately creating an exaggerated character of a feminist, which writers then fill with a bunch of oversimplifications, misrepresentations, and stereotypes to try to make it easy to discredit or delegitimize feminism. The goal is to make feminists and our movements look completely ridiculous, over the top, and unnecessary.
You would have to have been living under a rock for the past 12 months not to have realised that 2014 was the year when feminists lost the debate on everything. Literally every major cause taken up by the social justice warriors this year was a humiliating defeat. Unfortunately for feminists, when the world saw the true face of third-wave feminism, it was soundly rejected. Radical feminists exposed themselves to the world for the funless, hateful, vindictive, bullying, authoritarian, social Marxists they really are. Even Time magazine suggested feminism as one of the words that should be banned in 2015 because of its tiresome overuse. What did feminism achieve in 2014? Well, ironically, it began with an overtly bossy campaign to ban the word bossy, which of course was never going to happen, but it did provide an insight into how radical fembots are trying to rearrange society in their image by policing language in the spirit of the party in George Orwell's 1984. Not exactly a popular blueprint to be following. Then we had Gamergate, accusations of sexism within video game culture. But far from exposing this supposed evil, Gamergate blew up in the feminazis' faces by in fact exposing them for engaging in vitriolic and underhanded tactics to target what has always been one of the most inclusive communities in the world. Feminists attempt to infiltrate the video games industry, the most popular media on the planet, and use it for their own program of insidious social re-education was blown wide open. Feminists made the fatal error of picking an argument with gamers and thinking they could win. The consequences were disastrous. The backlash from gamers cost Gawker, who had sided with the fembots, millions of dollars in lost ad revenue.
And Gamergate happened, and I felt like I couldn't really comment because I'm not much of a gamer. But I did laugh because I know so many dudes who play as girl characters on online games because people, gamers, are nicer to them that way.
And then there was Shirtstorm. While the world celebrated the astounding achievement of scientist Dr. Matt Taylor in helping to land a probe on a comet, feminists bitterly complained about his shirt, made for him by his female friend. Taylor made a tearful apology, but the wave of revulsion against feminists for attempting to ruin one of humanity's most revered moments in decades by making it all about their idiotic, contrived peeve.
I know I'm a bit late on this video, but I feel like I still need to put it out there because I feel like this needs to be addressed. And some of you guys may not have heard of it. You know, many feminists today often find themselves at a loss as to why there are so many people, especially people who consider themselves left-wing like myself, who don't like them, who don't share their values, who don't want to identify with them or associate with them. And to any feminist watching this video, what I'm about to talk about is the perfect example why feminism is considered a dirty word today and why you have such a bad reputation with a lot of people. In case any of my viewers have not been keeping up on current events, a NASA probe recently landed successfully on a moving comet. This project represented over a decade of work and countless man-hours and woman-hours of labor. This is not only a milestone for space exploration, but a milestone for humanity, I think. Seeing these close-up images of a probe landing on an object millions of miles away, traveling thousands of miles per hour, it really captures the imagination and the spirit of human exploration. But there are some who seem to be unmoved and unenthralled by all this because they saw this as an opportunity to get offended and push their petty agenda. While skimming through Facebook, I saw a post linking to a certain article on The Verge, and this is before The Amazing Atheist made his video on the topic, by the way. And when I saw the title, I thought it was a satirical article or something making fun of modern-day feminists. That's what I immediately thought by looking at the title, because it seemed very sarcastic.
What the Hollywood machine turns out is a distorted and warped version of feminism, which bears little resemblance to actual feminist movements. In a desperate quest to distance themselves, their plots, and their characters from anything that could in any way be mistakenly mistaken for feminism, Hollywood writers rely on one of the most deceptive and disgusting tropes ever to be forged in the fires of Mount Doom. That trope is called the straw feminist. In television and movies, the straw feminist works by deliberately creating an exaggerated character of a feminist, which writers then fill with a bunch of oversimplifications, misrepresentations, and stereotypes to try to make it easy to discredit or delegitimize feminism.
And when I saw the title, I thought it was a satirical article or something making fun of modern-day feminists. That's what I immediately thought by looking at the title, because it seemed very sarcastic. But I was quickly reminded that modern-day feminists and their SJW brethren have been operating under Poe's law for many years now, meaning that it is impossible to tell when someone is trolling or satirizing them and whenever it's the real thing. So the title of the article reads as follows: I don't care that you land a probe on a comment, your shirt is sexist and ostracizing. Now, just reading this title, I'm sure you can probably imagine what kind of rhetoric it consists of in the article. In a nutshell, the two authors of this article, a man and a woman, find it deeply offensive and problematic, as the word they like to use, that one of the lead scientists on this project decided to wear a bowling shirt that had moderately scantily clad women embroidering it. Yes, this is what they got outraged over. On this day of monumental scientific achievement, this is what feminists decided to hone in on. And that should tell you a lot about their worldview and the way their minds work. And also keep in mind that the man who wrote most of this article is the co-founder of Polygon. So yeah, that's not really much of a shock. So first of all, I would like to point out how ironic it is that feminists want to attack and defame a man for his clothing, and yet if you were to criticize a woman's clothing for any reason whatsoever, feminists would proverbially burn you at the stake. And I'm of the opinion that people should generally be allowed to wear whatever they want. However, your clothes are inevitably going to impact how other people perceive you. But when I look at the way this man represents himself, I don't see sexism and misogyny. I simply recognize that he is part of the more recent generation of scientists, many of which are a lot more loose cannons and they don't adhere to strict dress codes. Scientists in various fields present themselves in a variety of ways, and it's a lot more acceptable for scientists today to cover their arms in tattoos, wear bowling shirts, or grow out a thick beard. A lot more so than it would have been 50 years ago. Now, I don't know if he dons such casual wear to work every single day. Perhaps this interview was conducted right after some laid-back, party or celebration after this occasion. Who knows? But I think this man's actions speak louder than his clothing, and considering what he has accomplished, I really don't see the harm in letting him dress how he sees fit while at work. He gets the job done.
I would like to say that I really hope it blows over quickly as far as the negative attention it's received. And I hope that Matt is remembered for being part of a team that have achieved something amazing. Also, I think he's made science look a bit cool, and I think it's appealed to younger people and people that may not have been interested in science, and he made them pay attention to him, which is brilliant. And there are people that have said to me they weren't even interested in the mission until they saw him. And it was him that grabbed their attention, and that's amazing. The fact that he's got more following for science by what he's achieved, and unfortunately, yes, because of how he looks. But if it gets people interested and has a bigger following for it, it's brilliant.
And as for this shirt being some heinous fixture of sexism and misogyny, that is just patently ridiculous. And it springs from this concept of objectification, which is a bogus term that does not merit its place in our vocabulary. It founds itself upon the notion that males who derive pleasure from female sexuality in a non-personal context don't value them as human beings, and therefore we see women as objects, and therefore we are misogynistic. There are a few terms in the vocabulary that distort and undermine the definition of misogyny more than this. First of all, its underlying assertion is that by being interested only in a woman's sexuality, you are treating them as an object. This paints the male in question as a borderline sociopath, the kind of perception you would expect a serial killer to have. It actually goes further because even most sociopaths on some level recognize that their victims are in fact humans, they just don't care. So do men devalue women to this extent simply because they go to strip clubs or draw female superheroes with excessive cleavage? Obviously not. Men don't forget that women are people simply because they are attracted to their physical features, nor do men suddenly abandon all empathy for women, even if their only interest in a particular woman at a particular time is sexual in nature. For example, if you entered a strip club, what most feminists would consider a mecca of objectification, and say that a guy began assaulting one of the strippers, I guarantee that most, if not all, the men there would immediately put a stop to it and probably beat the guy senseless. The thing is, human interactions are not always personal. In fact, the majority of them aren't. By your standard, any non-personal interaction in which someone uses their body to provide a service is objectification. I guess the guy delivering you a package from UPS is being objectified. I mean, you don't care about who he is, what his interests are, what his personality, his backstory is. He's just there to serve a purpose for you and then go away. The grocery store clerk who bags your food is being objectified. The maids who clean up your hotel room are being objectified. The point is, people use other people as a means to an end. That's what capitalist society does. That's what any society does, actually, that involves humans cooperating together. So in the context of sex, there is nothing inherently degrading about a woman or man showing off their pleasurable features for the enjoyment of others, much less risque drawings of people scantily clad that, feminists are really upset over nowadays with video games and now this shirt. But maybe this still hasn't gone through to some people. Let's take the example of, a crush. Now, I'm sure that if you're male or female, you've had a crush at some point of either gender, I don't care. Most likely, someone at some point has been attracted to someone else that they know at work or school or something like that. And so I'm sure that your attraction at first was most likely due to their physical appearance. Am I wrong? That's pretty much the basis of most crushes that people have. So there's probably a period of time between you first seeing them and actually getting the courage to go talk to them and get to know them and then perhaps date them. So does that mean that up until the point where you actually got to know them and you were simply just lusting after them, that you didn't value them as human beings, or that you saw them as objects, or that you had no empathy towards them? No, that just is not how humans typically view each other. And the same applies to anyone that you lust after or that you find attractive. The thing with objectification is that it wants us to view lust as something inherently dehumanizing, when actually it's kind of the exact opposite. It's the drive of our species' existence. But basically, objectification has become the left wing's version of sin and lust. That's why it's even applied to drawings and depictions in video games, the same way religion does it. Like how Anita Sarkeesian and all the other feminists have condemned Bayonetta as being some horrible menagerie of sexism and objectification, and they don't give a shit about the actual context of the game, and the fact that Bayonetta is a witty, strong, independent character who cowtails to no men and who uses sexuality literally as a weapon. All they see is the sexuality part, and therefore it's terrible and misogynistic and degrading to women. That's how simplistic their view is when it comes to objectification. Yeah, and I really think this term originates because so many of these feminists have a crippling fear of women who are more sexually appealing than they are, and they have a subconscious disdain for men for being attracted to those women and not them. Jealousy is a deep facet of female nature and human nature in general. It's what drives our economic system on some level. I mean, everyone is jealous of stuff that other people have. But it's something we need to keep under control on a personal and social level. And it's really pathetic to see it coming from people who claim to be enlightened thinkers, and that these people who hold these lofty positions of moral authority, when in reality they are based in petty emotions like jealousy and fear. But they go further than saying that it's just bad for men to lust after women and not care about them on a personal level. They go further because they label it as misogyny, meaning that we actively hate women. So they've classified lust as not only immoral, but as something that is inherently malicious. So in other words, if you have lust towards women, then that means you not only don't value them, but you also actively despise them. And all this is inferred simply from that one term, objectification. By using that term, you instantly go from displaying female sexuality to being a horrible bigot. So as you can clearly see, this term exists to demonize men for having basic heterosexual urges. It is a bullshit accusation based in a flawed and reactionary ideology. And that's how these nutcases can sit here and accuse this man of hating women just because he has a shirt with scantily clad women on it. It is unbelievably ignorant to levy such judgments at this man, because these people don't know him. These people don't know this guy, and they're making all these conclusions that he's a horrible man who hates women and is trying to ostracize them. And if you listen to this guy talk, you can see that this is clearly not that kind of guy at all. If you actually listen to him speak, he's a very deep and contemplative thinker, really thoughtful. He doesn't come across hostile at all. He seems very open. He seems to hold a Carl Sagan-esque view of the world and cosmos. Nothing about this guy indicates that he hates women.
This mission is there to answer some of the fundamental questions of how our solar system formed, why it formed, why the planets evolved as they did, and fundamentally why we're here as well. Comets are a leftover debris from the early solar system formation, so we look back in time at these, it gives an indication of how things evolved.
What these people are doing to this man is outright slander. I don't know if there is ground for a libel lawsuit, but it's close, because this is nothing more than a calculated smear. This man is being used as a scapegoat. This is a man who's dedicated to the pursuit of science, who works with women on a daily basis, but you're going to write him off as some kind of scumbag bigot just because he has appreciation of the female body? And the most ironic thing about this is that this shirt that he's wearing was made for him on his birthday by a female friend. Yes, I'm not kidding. This was made and designed by a woman. Isn't that just hilarious?
And finally, there was the UVA rape scandal. Having cited erroneous statistics for years to push a fallacious argument about rape culture on college campuses in order to defame men, feminists were hideously embarrassed when it emerged that key elements of Rolling Stone's story about a gang rape at the University of Virginia were completely unfounded. So despite the fact that many feminists are celebrating this as some kind of banner year for feminism, the worst thing to happen in 2014 to feminism was the increased exposure of radical feminists.
Alright, so I know I've done a couple of these types of videos lately, so I'm sorry if you're sick of them, but sometimes I just see things and I just gotta respond. Here goes. A group of college students invented a nail polish that changes colors when it comes into contact with date rape drugs such as roofies. The way it works is it enables you to test your drink. You just put your finger in, you stir it around, and if it stays the same color, you're good. If it changes color, somebody is trying to drug you. And nope, not happening. Of course, some well-known feminists have said that it reinforces rape culture in our society.
In television and movies, a straw feminist works by deliberately creating an exaggerated character of a feminist, which writers then fill with a bunch of oversimplifications, misrepresentations, and stereotypes to try to make it easy to discredit or delegitimize feminism. The goal is to make feminists and our movements look completely ridiculous, over the top, and unnecessary.
A lot of it goes back to the common complaint by many feminists that we should teach men not to rape instead of teaching women not to get raped. I've addressed this point in other videos, but the more I think about it, we need to teach men not to rape. Doesn't that imply that people who rape don't know it's wrong? I'm sorry, but especially when it comes to people sneaking date rape drugs into people's drinks. They didn't know that wasn't okay. They didn't think, oh, it's wrong to drug somebody into unconsciousness so I could have my way with them. Men aren't taught not to rape. So the problem is ignorance? I hate that line of thinking because doesn't it excuse the actions of the rapist? He was just never taught not to rape. It's not his fault. He didn't see a problem with forcing himself upon a woman against her will. He didn't get the pamphlet. Doesn't that take responsibility off the rapist? The rapist should be the only one, by the way, blamed for the rape. They are disgusting and worthless people. Don't make excuses for them. One feminist who doesn't like the nail polish said, I shouldn't have to test my drink at the bar. That's not the world I want to live in. Then don't. I probably wouldn't buy this, but I especially understand a woman who has been roofied in the past wanting to buy this nail polish to take extra precautions against it. The world that you want to live in. Let's talk about the real world because unfortunately people do get roofied. It's happened to a couple people I know. It's a thing that is affecting people right now. And if people want to protect themselves against it, let them. But on the other side, some people say, well, women shouldn't go to bars or clubs or parties if they don't want to get roofied. I also think that's ridiculous. reality stinks, there are bad people out there, but I don't think that means that you have to live in constant fear, locked up in your dorm room and never go out, no fun whatsoever. I don't think that's healthy either. I just don't understand the outrage when something new comes out to help protect women against rape. I think it's smart to protect yourself. I also think it's smart not to rape people. But that's just my 2 cents.
It seems when you don't have enough sense, you become a feminist.